CBS News.
It's Saturday, baby.
Welcome back to Ask a DM. Today I'm joined with Dylan and
Dylan?
Tom.
Tom. There we go.
And today's question is one that I have seen much love and hate for those who have never even played the system. Dylan, Tom, what is up with 4th edition D&D?
You mean the best starter edition for new players ever made?
Some would argue that'd be 5e.
Well, they obviously haven't looked through the 4E books on how to build a character. It basically covers your leveling from every level to make the hard decisions out of the way to get to faster playtimes.
Yeah, it kind of does.
Yeah. So once again, if I was starting with new players, especially young ones who have never played before, I'd start them out on 4E just so they can get a handle of how the game is played, and then start them on the harder editions like 3.5 or 5th edition.
It's the more math intensive and other such, yeah.
Yes, the ones more based around character building.
Fair enough. That's an interesting point.
Yeah. I would say 5th edition is a little easier math-wise because they've got your
The bounded accuracy.
bounded accuracy and advantage, disadvantage. That's what it boils down to. 4th edition does still have a lot of the standard kind of basic math to it. Like your to-hit matrix also includes half your character level.
Yeah, I think they took a lot of the math they fixed over 4th edition and just smoothed it out into 5e. Because a lot of people don't realize, or they don't want to admit to this, but 5e, it's just 4.5.
Oh, I'll agree.
A lot of stuff carries over.
It's not the character building for 4th edition for me. It's the character leveling from that point on. Because you find you get just as many questions when a character levels and they don't know how to play as when they're building.
Yeah. Yeah, in 4E, it's basically like you get this or you get that. Like, depending on your build, what are you doing? Oh, you got a supplement book? You can also pick from this.
Yeah, most characters have that same chart of, here's what you should have at this level.
Yep.
You get a utility at level 5. Enjoy.
Yep. But yeah, so actually, the reason why 4th edition got a lot of pushback was for multiple reasons. You have to think about what was before 4th edition, so 3.5, which is one of the much more math-intensive and also RP-intensive systems.
Because of all the options you have.
Because of all the options and all the content.
There's a lot in 3.5.
And when you think about it, 4th edition is an answer to video games. It's not an answer to other tabletop RPGs.
Okay.
So if you think about the year it was published, 4th edition came out in, I believe, 2008, if memory serves correct.
That's a good year for video games, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. And actually, the number one RPG at the time was actually World of Warcraft Burning Crusade, which was launched in, I think it was November of 2007, or right about in 2007 timeframe.
The early days of World of Warcraft.
Yeah, in the early days of World of Warcraft. And even now, like, if you ask like dedicated World of Warcraft players what was the best expansion, sure, a lot of the dedicated core fan base will say Burning Crusade. Yeah. In fact, and I think recently, maybe within the last year, the World of Warcraft Classic released Burning Crusade Classic. So they brought that back out.
But you're saying that 4th edition, you feel it was inspired by a lot of the online RPGs or video games at the time?
Yes, because it is an answer to the MMO. If you remember from Pathfinder 3.5, there's no such thing as a cooldown. You have your daily slots, and whether you can do them more or less like have an ability to recharge the ability or not. Whereas 4th edition introduces like a cooldown mechanic where you have your at-will powers, which you can do once a turn, your encounter powers, which you can do once per encounter, or between short rests, and then you have your daily powers, which you can do once per extended rest.
Yes.
Not necessarily once per day.
Which I still use to this day to remember.
Yeah.
You'll even hear me say, is that encounter power?
You did start us on 4th edition, so there's a little bias there, but...
Well, when we first started playing, 5th edition wasn't out yet. The most up-to-date edition was 4th edition. And I really liked that, so at my local gaming store, what we played was 4th edition, because they were weekly There were weekly dungeons
I think-
published by Wizards of the Coast.
What, a year in D&D Beyond came out?
Yeah.
Or the one between 4th edition and 5th edition that didn't fly
Beyond-
as high as it could?
Beyond came out as a response to 5th edition to be a supplemental third party.
Yeah.
Oh, wait,
Uh,
no. I think it was Pathfinder 2.
Yeah, Pathfinder 2nd edition came out.
Which...
We don't talk about in
Well,
this house.
But, yeah, it's a Pathfinder 1st edition household thing.
All right, well,
Yeah.
that's another question for later now.
Yeah, we'll have a PF2. But also, so there was that mechanic,
Uh-huh.
and that drove a lot of players away because, like, one of the most notable changes I can remember is think about your Wizard spellbook from Pathfinder 3.5, and think about the Wizard spellbook in 4th edition. Totally different mechanic.
Yeah.
Wizards more or less had the ability to swap out their at wills, their encounters, and their dailies during extended rests, so that they had access to their entire selection of skills and abilities
Yeah.
from whatever source book they were pulling from.
Mhm.
Whereas other classes didn't necessarily have that option. So it effectively deleted the Wizard spellbook mechanic. Going from 3.5 to 4, that was one of the biggest. That was one of their biggest changes
Mhm.
that pushed negatively, in my
It
opinion.
definitely created a divide because
Yeah.
I will agree. One of the reasons I never played a wizard in 4th edition was because
Limited spell usage.
it's not even that. I hate one of the drawbacks of 4th edition was because they were trying to balance the quadratic wizard linear fighter problem.
Yep.
They kind of made everyone wizards in a way.
Yes, they did.
And by doing that, why would you play a wizard?
Yes, and that's exactly the point, because now you have fighters doing the stance. Remember, so like in World of Warcraft, you had a warrior class who could do multiple different types of stances, and depending on their stance or their skill tree, they were able to do different things.
Yeah,
like
the
tank,
marshals
DPS.
definitely were
Much like
amazing in 4th
the
edition.
Tome of Battle from 3.5.
And we don't talk about that.
Actually,
in this house
the
either.
Tome of Battle, the Book of the Nine Swords, the Book of Weeaboo anime fighting style, and Banned.
Yeah.
Actually, that was the prototype for 4th edition, if you think about it. As
It-
well as some stuff from Eberron.
Yeah,
actually.
you got the stance
Yes,
stance
it was the
with-
prototype and the
It's-
stance.
It's
yeah.
what they used.
Yes.
Because
as an
there was
outlaw.
a few other things they didn't use that could have became 4th
And
edition.
just for
Yeah.
you watchers out there, the reason to me that book was so very broken was a very generalized term for the Ironheart stance, where basically any ongoing effect you can flex your way out with a single stance. Very vague in the description.
Yeah, FAQ'd multiple times.
Yeah,
all that kind of
just
stuff.
no
And
straight answer.
For those who have never played 3.5, to kind of a quick rundown of 3.5, the Tome of Battle and 4th edition, it was basically short rest powers or abilities you could just activate that did really neat things, or in the case of
Yeah.
Ironheart Surge,
Yeah.
but then
And-
once again, it basically gave spells to everyone, which did
Yeah.
solve the problem, but it kind of did create this sort of, everyone's kind of the same.
Yeah.
To an extent.
In
Well-
my opinion, 3.5 would be my favorite version if it wasn't for the lack of a feat required for broken movement. If I could get free broken movement 3.5, it
So
would have
cherry
been my
pick
favorite
some of the stuff
campaign.
from like
yeah.
broken movement from 5e,
And that would be
maybe some of the stuff from 4e and so on, which a lot of DMs do. I know my stuff I do
Yeah.
that a lot.
Well, we haven't even touched on the main reason why 4E failed. Received like such negative backlash.
That's true. So
And that's-
besides the backlash of the whole
Nerds.
wizard thing,
Yeah.
what was the main thing?
They changed the OGL. So 4th edition actually has so for those of you who aren't familiar and aren't necessarily in the publishing scene when it comes to D&D and Wizards of the Coast, with respect to Dungeons and Dragons
Yeah.
as a trademark and a copywritten name,
Yeah.
there is an open gaming license, OGL,
Mhm.
that allows third-party developers to publish their own content using the name Dungeons and Dragons and a lot of other stuff inside the all-encompassing standard rules document, the SRD.
So basically, it's all official.
So basically,
it's-
like
so
the
you-
one
the-
we used for Pathfinder for this particular game.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Because Pathfinder First Edition is actually published using the 3.5 SRD. But however, multiple things were changed. So, like most notably, when the change to Pathfinder, the experience chart changed because in 3.3 and 3.5, the experience chart wasn't something that was protected under the OGL. That was actually restricted IP. However, the names of certain creatures were also restricted IP. So with respect to the intellectual property of Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast, certain creatures like Mind Flayers and Beholders are protected property.
Or in the case of the Dragon of Dragons, Bahamut is now Behemoth in
In this
On Pathfinder.
campaign
Yeah.
setting, in Pathfinder, he has a third.
Already.
They have a different iconic representation of that particular.
So they went
type of
away
entity.
from the OGL, which is why
So
you could
should
find
we be using that? in
everything
this
for
video?
3.5 online.
I don't know. We can use Behemoth because
Okay.
that's Frog Gods.
Yeah,
But
but
fourth
you
edition
said
doesn't have
Beholder and
Well,
Mind
they
Flayer.
changed it. They switched to a GSL,
Mhm.
and it is for all intents and purposes to summarize it, because I haven't read it because I'm not a lawyer. The most notable changes was that it affected revenue off of third-party profits. So, long story short, they restricted revenue to third-party publishers. Well, and I'm not even going to say restricted. They changed the avenue that third-party publishers and developers needed to follow in order to publish content for Dungeons and Dragons. And just like any dungeon master, once you start messing with your players' money, they're going to get upset.
Yeah.
So you have not only not only do you have big changes to the actual mechanisms and mechanics of the game, but you also have a change behind the scenes to the legal aspect of the game and how people can use it as open content.
Yeah. Fair enough. Very true. I know they also tried to do some online support for competitive play, but that didn't work
That
out.
would explain a lot why 4th edition in general has the least amount of source material in which to draw from for your campaigns.
Yeah.
I've seen these 6 books that make up 4th edition.
Yeah, and that's because like we were
Yeah.
saying that
It's harder for third parties. Meanwhile, looks to be third party to me.
Yep,
Looks
third
a little
party.
third party to me.
Yeah, I had to scour for PDFs just to get stuff that's been lost from forums
Yeah.
and threads, and
Yeah.
exactly.
just to have the option still.
And so, but honestly, like to this day, I would say that 4th edition is a solid system. And for anybody who likes 5th edition and maybe started with 5th edition, but they want more combat-oriented mechanics and more like rounded-out combat mechanics.
Or even the group skill challenges.
And exactly, like group skill challenges. Check out 4th edition. A lot of that stuff, I don't think is open sourced. Because I know the content of the 3.5 SRD is open source, so you can find them on PDFs online.
But if they're not really streaming, or have to worry about the publishing agreements and such, and just for home games, you could use 4th edition to improve your stuff, where you have the sort of Medusa. All right, you gotta make 3 saves or you're stoned. Not like in the earlier editions where you're just instant stone.
Correct.
You're getting slowed down and all this, or the death throws. I love that one on monsters where you do the final blow and then it explodes, or it maybe shoots one last attack.
Yep.
Or the bloody mechanic where in the case of dragons, they can now automatically recharge a breath attack and
Yeah.
maybe get to use it one other time in combat because sometimes they only get
Yeah,
one.
they changed the way the recharge mechanic works. So rather than being a dedicated round, it was during your end step. You rolled a recharge die, and then on a certain value, it would recharge. But yeah, so for those who don't know, Bloodied is a condition in 4th edition. That's where you are at half your hit
Also
points or
still
fewer.
Yeah.
And I think we still even use that at our table.
We do.
And
We
it was
use a
like-
lot of the terminology still.
Yeah.
I'm bloodied, guys. I'm
I
at
still
half.
use at will encounter and daily.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's my outwill, that's my encounter, yeah, and then you always incorporate skill check. Okay, I need a knowledge check here, I need a survival check, and it keeps the
All right,
entire
and I
group
need one
involved.
for everybody.
Yeah.
So we need this.
Yeah.
Everybody's got to roll at least
Which
one.
was from 4th edition,
Yep.
and it's really weird they didn't port that over more.
So that was another thing that got negative feedback
Really?
for 4th edition, because ultimately its implementation is meant to override Rule of Cool and streamline traveling and exploration. So when you think about it, the most common skill challenge is usually for like navigating some type of like ravine or a dark forest.
Cross a
Right.
canyon, for example.
Cross a canyon, like you're doing things to physically move the party in the game
Yeah.
without actually having to do things like cast Wall of Stone and create a bridge, or cast Fly on everybody and have them fly across the ravine.
Which
right?
are still options, though.
Well, there's still options, but those were replaced with utility powers. So at the
Okay.
exact same time as the spellbook changed, the access to those utilities also had to change. So in this case, with respect to 4th edition, having a climber's kit was mostly to give you a bonus like in a skill challenge where you were using dungeoneering or nature skill checks in order to do
carried
something.
over into 5th edition.
Right.
Yeah, you still get your tool bags, your backpacks, and such
Yeah.
with the equipment, which give you a little bonus or proficiency in 5th edition.
Right.
skills.
Now, in this case, when you think about that,
Mhm.
with respect to 4th edition and 5th edition, those items are giving you some type of actual static bonus.
Yes.
Whether it be advantage, whether it be a numerical bonus, whether it negate a penalty, etc.
Which is kind of a carryover from even the earlier editions of D&D, technically.
No.
No?
No.
Not
Because,
they didn't have like stuff that give you a little +1, +2 here or there?
well, they negate penalties.
Okay,
in
fair
3.5 in Pathfinder. So, for example, attempting to pick a lock without a set of lock picks, -5 penalty. Doable.
Ah,
You can actually make
I've
the
done
check, but it makes it more
Chopsticks.
difficult, right?
Yeah.
So 3.5 Pathfinder treats it more or less as the tools negate the penalty for not,
Okay.
doing something or trying to do it which is sort of like raw by your hands, which is where the creation of the Gnomish Any tool came out of, which is not everybody wants to keep track of 17 different sets of tools in their
Yeah.
kit, so they're just going to buy this one thing.
Yeah.
The utility.
The old tool.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Swiss Army knife.
But-
Right. But the rule of cool was overridden because now let's think about how in our game, if I tasked the party with traversing a ravine,
Mhm.
people would be talking about how much rope they have, people would be
Yeah,
talking about what
which
types of maneuverability
We've
they
done in
have.
our tables a lot.
Exactly. How in 4th edition, that entire discussion of how we're actually going to make this maneuver
Mhm.
is overridden by the skill challenge. Because the dungeon master at the time says, if you're going to get across a skill challenge, or if you're going to get across this ravine,
Yeah.
we're going to do a skill challenge. It's going to be these 4 skills. Everybody needs to roll at least one. This is my threshold for success. This is my success, or this is my threshold for failure, right? And then you either cross the ravine or you don't.
Yeah.
Right. So you're overriding that ability to allow the players room to explore, and it more or less railroads exploration, traversing, and rule of cool.
Yeah. But on the counterpoint, the one thing, the mechanic that I enjoyed most about Pathfinder actually built into it was the fact that you didn't stop at level 20. It went all the way up to level 30 right there in the book
Yeah.
for every player.
4th edition.
4th edition, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. Did I say 3.5?
You said Pathfinder.
Pathfinder. Even worse.
But yeah.
See, they all pale in comparison to 4.
Yeah.
But Tom, we were
but
players
yeah.
in 4th edition mainly.
Yeah.
You ran mainly.
And I
but
enjoyed being able to know that
Yeah.
my character at level 15 still was only halfway there to the final end.
Yeah, to epic. In 4th edition they broke it down into tiers, very similar to kind
Yeah,
of
Heroic Tier was 1 through 10,
Paragon.
was 11 through 20, and then
Epic.
Epic Destiny was 21, or Epic was 21 through 30.
Yeah.
And each
Yeah.
had the middle had Paragon, Path, and then there was Epic
Drink
Destiny, which gave you
these.
stuff. But
Yep.
Tom, as another player of 4th edition, did you ever feel like, because like you were saying how some tables where it got rid of the using your spells and our stuff to overcome a problem. Did you ever feel like we had that limitation? Because I don't remember us
a
having it.
limitation. Well, then again, under our DM, Rule of Cool still played.
That's true.
They would homebrew it. I mean, having no knowledge about how to disarm a bomb as character and or player, was able to disarm one just enough to be able to move it to another door. Now, just because I passed the skill check, that skill check probably would have been way too hard for me even to roll on a die if you looked at that character.
Yeah.
But thanks to Rule of Cool, I was allowed to do that because the DM didn't think of it, which made it cool.
Which we have a good DM.
Yeah.
And
Once
who's
again,
open
a
to
good
the,
this goes into a good DM knows when to let it happen.
Yes. And thankfully, we have a DM, when you DM most of the time for us, that you're right there like, yes, I want to see this work. Even if the odds are not with us, like, no, I want to see
Once
this
again,
work.
it's the new girl meme where it's, no, that's silly. Do it.
Yes. There's another element of 4th edition I think I should always be mentioned, and it's the minion system.
Yes.
I love the minion system from a DM's perspective, building combat encounters.
Great, yeah, great
Yep.
great
So-
for balancing your combat.
What is a minion?
So traditionally, a minion is a creature
Mhm.
with 1 hit point, and when it's reduced to 0 hit points, it's destroyed. They're not unconscious, and they tend to have the same or usually 20% better defenses. So one of the big changes from 4th edition is that your Fortitude, Reflex, and Will were no longer saving throws that you made. Those are actually static defenses that functioned like armor class.
Yeah.
With respect to 3.5 Pathfinder, they were kind of like having a touch armor class and a flat-footed armor class. They were just different types of defenses.
Without armor or without your dexterity bonus.
Yeah, exactly. And then it was pulled the same way, except that your fortitude, you were able to use either your strength or your con mod.
Yes, and I
in order
love
to
that.
jam.
Tom, you like that too,
Yes.
where you could
Actually,
utilize strength or con.
I have used similar to the minion system, and I know that you have as well, where sometimes if the combat is going poorly for my players, or people are hitting really hard, but the HP is too much,
and they're getting.
I will alter to a version of the minion system where I'll go 4 hits. This guy lasts 4 hits, no matter what the HP is. He's only going 4 more hits.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it makes it a lot easier on the DM because now you're not charting
You're not
346 minus 12.
Yes.
But also, so minions usually had like a static damage. So if they were given a spear, it was usually just like the average damage plus maybe their strength modifier.
Yeah, like a
is what the
D6
spear
plus
would do.
4.
Yeah, so it would treat it as 7.
Yeah.
Right? It would just always do 7 damage.
Yeah.
And that was one of the clues that players could pick up on, that the token attacking you or the creature attacking you was a minion, because it was always doing static damage. But yeah, so like if you had like a goblin minion, like a non-minion token maybe has like an armor class of 15. A minion token might have an armor class of 16.
Yeah.
Just to make it a little bit harder to hit.
But once you do, it's gone.
But once you do, it's gone. They're never hit on a miss. So if you have a power or an ability that allows to do a little bit of damage on a missed attack from 4th edition, minions negated that as a super rule. And if they... There was something else about them that made them kind of unique. Oh yes, they also usually had like a secondary power or skill that they could use to synergize with their leader.
Yeah,
So,
like pack tactics actually.
Pack tactics
I
is a
just
great
now that you
example.
said that, I remember that
Yeah.
because they gave that the kobolds in 5 originally.
Yep.
Pack tactics were part of the minion package typically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've also liked using them with casters because when a wizard throws out that fireball and you have like a whole army and you just take out just a solid block and they're gone,
Yeah.
the players love it.
Yep.
And everyone's excited, going, "All right, that's 15 down. Do it again." Oh, okay, next turn.
So this episode's just going to be 4E.
Well, yeah, that was the main question for today.
No, that's
was,
perfectly fine. I just realized.
4E, what's the deal? Or like,
yeah,
the biggest controversy in Dungeons and Dragons.
yeah.
I still
that's
say
clickbait.
4. What is it good for?
Yeah, 4.
I think
that's a good one.
from what we've been saying, because we've been highlighting a lot of the positives, but also you brought up some of the behind the scenes issues.
Well, why it wasn't immediately embraced, but I still find nowadays the only people who say they don't like it are the people who haven't played it, and it's actually carried on from hearing other people say, I don't like
Yeah,
it.
a little bit of bandwagon.
It's cool
hate.
to not like 40.
Yeah. It's like 4E is the Nickelback, you know? It's like...
Or the Guy Fieri.
Exactly.
It's like the Guy Fieri of Dungeons and Dragons. Or the
Yeah.
Nickelback of
Can
Dungeons
you
and
tell me
Dragons.
why you hate him? No. All right, then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think because there's probably a lot because it was just different for a lot of people too.
Yeah.
They did try to change a lot of the sacred cows. I noticed that.
Yeah.
Some were okay, but some people were like, "That's not my D&D."
Yeah, like movement.
I mean,
you know,
heck,
the
Pathfinder came around because we'll make our own D&D.
Yeah.
Blackjack. Other stuff.
Well, yeah, but like another thing that they changed was movement. So for our table, every other diagonal counts as 10 feet rather than 5 feet.
Yeah,
and it helps to kind of round out things that should be blasts actually look more like circles.
Yeah.
They got rid of that in 4th edition, so your explosions are squares.
Yeah,
and
it was
your,
a bit more.
And your
grid.
auras are cubes, and like
And the movement is based on how many squares you can move. Cause
Yeah, but my dice are dodecahedron.
I do remember reading
Yeah.
that they were trying to implement like an online support play like network where you
Yeah.
go to like a comic store in your area and sit down and it's like, oh, here's my character, here's
Yeah.
my stuff, and then it's there, it's official. Or if you want to go online, you can just port it over
like,
instantly.
Yeah.
like maybe you've seen us at MegaCon, and we've talked about doing a campaign at MegaCon live in one of the gaming rooms, perhaps, maybe even recorded. That's the perfect time to bring in a 4E game.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing that I think they were trying to compete with that is that Pathfinder, from what I recall, actually came out before 4th edition. It came
Around
out
the same time, but
roughly, around the same time period.
yeah.
But the
Yeah, I mean, we could look
what Pathfinder implemented as part of its publication was the Pathfinder Role Playing Society, which is
Yes.
their
PFS.
online version.
It's their 5e. It's Adventures League.
Yes.
Pathfinder. It's Pathfinder Society, and then 4th edition was supposed to have something, but it never
Yeah.
It never happened, and I think that really hurt for you because they even had a really neat character creator online, like what
Yeah.
D&D Beyond did. But it had all the options. It would tell you where it was from, what you could, and like what was compatible, what wasn't.
Yeah.
And I know reading a lot of the forums and threads on 4E, everyone loved it.
Yeah.
Like, this is great. I wish they'd done more with this. But a lot of people hate on it because it's just what everyone else was. Oh, no one. I don't like Flat War.
Yeah. Well, it's out of print.
Yeah.
Which they're not making books on it anymore, so the books are kind of hard to get a hold of. I luckily have a full collection.
What was the
of,
year on it,
fourth
though?
edition.
Their copyright is listed as the year 2000.
That doesn't make sense. That might be the OGL.
It might be. But
It
okay.
might be. I mean, that is their open gaming license right here, version 1.0A.
Yeah, but this is Pathfinder 1E, which means this is based off of 3.5.
But it was.
Gross. But either way, that well predates
Fourth edition.
4th edition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2008.
But then there was playtest materials, so that might be was like, we're not gonna do that.
Either way.
Yeah, if I recall from my research correctly, Hasbro acquired Wizards of the Coast in 1993.
Yeah.
And the deal.
And now they own D&D.
Yeah, that's when they bought it. Yeah.
Yep.
No, nowadays Hasbro
Yeah.
now owns D&D as well.
Yeah, because they own Wizards of the Coast.
So really, it's just a system that was very different, created a divide because it tried to.
Yeah. It is.
It actually it streamlined a lot of stuff, and that was another complaint I remember hearing. It's all about combat. There's no rules for RP, and that's what I was saying earlier.
You don't
in
need
previous
rules
episode
for
about
it's combat heavy.
it is, but it's only explaining the combat. It doesn't
Yeah.
say you can't RP or how to RP because
Well,
that's just that's
and
at
that's
the table.
well, and that's one of the things that I was talking about is the opportunities to RP while you're adventuring were truncated heavily by the skill challenge.
I'm going to use this
yeah,
and that.
and you could even have a dungeon master.
I
know-
see what you're saying.
Yeah, you could even have like rather than actually RPing some kind of like high society courtly visit audience with the king
Mm-hmm.
in order to like negotiate for information or do some kind of exchange or whatever,
I'm
just
gonna need a
content.
persuasion roll. I'm gonna need intimidation. I'm gonna
Exactly.
need
You
a
could literally
pickpocket.
just break it down to a skill challenge and
Okay.
and streamline it, which takes that opportunity for rule of cool away from the players.
It was really easy for players to fall into that trap and not RP out those choices. And
Yeah.
I see. So easy to fall into it, but that's just your tables may vary.
Yeah, but I mean, like if you're a table that what's this?
This is the release date for the actual Pathfinder.
It's 2009.
Yep, August of 2009 is when it first started
The
its
first
publication.
edition.
So
So, yeah,
actually,
it was a
after.
response.
Yeah, it was a response. Yeah.
Okay.
And a good response, in my opinion. Pathfinder is still a credible system. Same with 4th edition.
Mhm.
Just
Yeah.
I think though the point you made earlier, and as players starting in 4th edition, definitely I read it and take what you want from it. There's a lot of really good abilities that you can give to your marshals, different versions of the spells, tons of items,
Yeah.
and let alone the DM tools like with the minions,
And then-
the skill challenges, and all that you can
and
incorporate.
even with the RPG, as you guys were saying, I never had a problem getting an RP, little RP going on. In fact, I believe the quote was, "Why aren't you playing a charisma character?"
Yeah, we did that
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we started recording back then, that would be on a T-shirt now.
It would be. All right, yeah, it's a good summary of what's up with 4th edition.
Yeah. All right. If you like this content, you like our channel, make sure to check out our ongoing campaign, The Sword of Air. Big shout out to Bill Webb and Frog God Games for putting together The Sword of Air. They're great content.
Yep.
Also, please keep an eye out for our one-shots that we do on off nights.
Yep, that too.
We'll be posting many more of those coming up real soon.
That as well.
As well.
If you don't necessarily like Pathfinder 1st edition or 4th edition, and you're part of the group that likes 5th edition, Frog God Games does have 5th edition content out.
Yes, it does.
And also, the World of the Lost Lands book is system neutral. So if you love the world that The Sword of Air takes place in, you like the absolutely massive planet that takes years to navigate.
And we still have only seen a small.
Small fraction.
When are
I
we
mean-
going to be doing the Lost Lands first?
Actually, with the
They do have their own proprietary system, Swords and Sorcery, which is based off of AD&D.
part of the map we have, is that basically just like the United States and a little bit of Canada?
I'm not that familiar with
On
the
the scale?
dimensions.
Why
Yeah,
do we let you
but it is.
There's more.
There is more. Actually, that entire map is only half of the northern hemisphere of the planet.
Oh, so that's not even the whole map.
That's
just
not even
part.
the whole map.
So when are we going to print out the rest? Because you know we're going to end up doing some traveling.
Well,
We have a flying boat.
Yeah, this is true.
We do have a flying
will
ship.
have
We can go
to-
right over the Razor Coast and never touch ground.
Well, you would run into the storm, to the maelstrom.
But we could also
That's fine.
taunt the blood and the tide the whole way over. But that's another
That
time, another
is-
discussion,
yeah.
another question.
Another
All
question
right.
next time.
Excellent. See you guys next time.
See you next time.